Hey, Aliana here. This is a new topic on Two Women Talking, and we had some technical difficulties. Song's internet was acting up, so you'll probably hear less from her for the first few segments of this one until we got the problem fixed. She switched to her phone. So just so you know, we are not leaving Song out. There were technical difficulties. We had to cut stuff out. But as it goes along, she does get back in the flow of things. It's ironic because Disney princesses are one of her favorite topics. But with that caveat emptied, we present this topic of Two Women Talking with special guest Derwin Mack. It's time for another Two Women Talking. Two Women Talking with a Man. Two Women Talking with a Man is back after a few weeks of Galatea, who's amazing. We have another author. You listeners, viewers have heard me talk about this dude a lot. Derwin Mack, author of Mecha Jesus and Other Stories, The Moon Under Her Feet, the novel, the other novel, Shrine of the Siren Stone, the short story collection, The Dragon and the Stars. He was the co-editor of that one. Derwin is here to talk to us about the subversiveness of Disney princesses, because you may not know Song. Derwin is a huge Disney princess fan. So you guys are going to get along great. Derwin, thanks for coming on Two Women Talking.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so Song, you are the Disney princess. You are a resident Disney princess.
I was going to say, we know I'm always down for Disney princess apologia.
Right. But you know what? We don't have to apologize, right? Because Derwin provided us a whole cheat sheet for this episode, which was amazing. Since 2000, the year 2000, the Princess franchise has earned $45.4 billion. That's 24 years. That's almost equal to the 46.7 billion that the Star Wars franchise has earned in 47 years. That's an eye-popping statistic. When you think about the money involved, you know,
we talked in the conversation with Galatea about how, you know, Barbie and the Eras tour, it was called the Summer of the Girl because, oh, hey, women will show up and put down money if you cater to them. And I mean, the Disney Princess franchise proves that.
Yeah.
So go ahead,
or in the case of the Disney princesses, the parents of girls will put up the money to buy the products and the merchandise. Although it's the merchandising is expanding. Most of that 45.4 billion is in the films, the TV shows, the merchandising, especially toys and costumes. But it is expanding. There is now a Disney authorized line of Disney princess costumes for adults.
Yes.
That includes. Wait, really?
Yes, yep. There is. It just started about 2 years ago. I've Spirit Halloween usually brings them out into its pop-up shops around Halloween.
Yeah, it's a license.
Yeah, okay. Licensed ones, not the knockoffs you get from from those other stores. But they're modernized versions of the Disney princesses. So Snow White has a skirt that goes above the knee and does not have that medieval collar. And the Cinderella is another, a short skirt version of the traditional costume too. Now so far I've only seen 2 of them, but where there's Disney will bring up more.
You guys can't see me, but my lip is curling in disgust.
Because of the color schemes?
No, just because, it's a short skirt version that's modernized. And like, here's the thing. I don't hate modernized versions of the princesses, but I don't know, that just, I don't like it.
It sort of defeats the purpose, and that's why we're talking about subversion. And when you do sexy, what's the one I have here? I really like the Sleeping Beauty premium costume. Yeah, I think it sort of misses the point when you subvert the subversion, because let's face it, the Disney princesses were they'd be called woke now. And Derwin, what drew you to Disney princesses in the first place? Because obviously it's harder for guys to kind of fly the flag, and I like Disney princesses.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously there was a cosplaying aspect to them. Although I typically cosplayed as Disney villains. Well, the Mad Hatter doesn't really count as a villain, but he's not really a hero either. And the other Disney villain I cosplayed as was Cruella de Vil, so I was in the Disney cosplay camp already. But the princesses, what I found intriguing with the princesses is that if you look at social media or Facebook or Twitter, anytime anyone mentions the Disney princesses, there's always going to be the inevitable comment from someone saying, "Well, they're a group of white privileged women who conform to gender norms, and they're just waiting for a prince to rescue them." Right?
Which
And
is
Wow,
no,
I love the
yeah.
disregard of how many of them are abuse victims.
yeah, yeah,
There's so much privilege in being an abuse victim.
Well, I mean, that was the original three, right? Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora. Those are the pre-Renaissance princesses. And they
that's
were
right.
all, yeah, they were all classic fairy tales, all kind of caught up in, well, Snow White and Cinderella were definitely caught up in class struggle. Sleeping Beauty was a little bit different, but still, I mean, really what they did with the stories of my take on them, and I'm interested what you two got from them. I mean, Walt Disney had daughters. That's a biographical point I think is relevant. I'm not doing death of the author here. And he wanted to make entertainment for his girls.
Mm,
And so the fact that he took cautionary tales, Cinderella's not a cautionary tale, but Snow White is certainly a cautionary tale. Because a lot of fairy tales were, stay in the town, don't venture into the woods, be good, do as you're told. But he took these stories and turned them into the reason the princes helped these women is they were inherently good. Snow White kind of ventured out on her own and had these adventures. And, there was sort of a purity of spirit plus the call to adventure that repackaged these stories for audiences of the 1930s through the 50s, almost into the 60s. It's interesting that there's a gap in the
yeah.
princessing as second wave feminism got going. Derwin, do you have an analysis on that point historically?
Yeah, well, historically, it's funny because people think that there are a lot of Disney princesses, like that seems to be the general public perception. Now, at the current time, there's 13 official princesses, plus a few that were originally on the official franchise list and then dropped off, and a couple that were never put into the franchise. But there's 13, but of that 13, only 3 of them belong to the so-called classic Disney period. So Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora. And then there's a 30-year gap between Aurora and Ariel.
So I want to give some, Disney nerd context to that. Part of it was because Walt Disney almost certainly had ADHD. And I don't think that's even questioned. But he had a thing where once he did something and accomplished it, he wanted to do something different. So, he did Snow White, he was super passionate about that. They did Sleeping Beauty. By the time they got to Cinderella, he was kind of over the fairy tale princess. He's like, we've done this. So, Cinderella suffered a lot from budget cuts and other issues. And so I think part of the gap was just because he wasn't interested in doing any more princesses at that point because he wanted to do more interesting things.
Yeah, and in addition to that, there could be multiple reasons for that 30-year gap. But another reason was that after he died, the corporation sort of flailed around for a period, right?
Mhm.
And there's a documentary film called Waking Sleeping Beauty, which was about that dark period where Disney animation performed so poorly that the Walt Disney Company even considered shutting down its animation division. They knew they were in trouble when their big film of the year, Black Cauldron,
Oh, that was a
Yeah.
notorious
Okay.
bomb.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they knew they were in trouble when the Canadian-made Care Bears movie did better at the box office than Black Cauldron.
Okay, but
Yeah.
let's at least mention the behind the scenes stuff that went on with the Black Cauldron
Yeah.
Yeah.
was an absolute nightmare. You had, what was it? Jeffrey Katzenberg, I think,
Yeah.
who came in, and he's like, they kept telling him, we can't cut anymore, we can't do this.
Mhm.
So he started grabbing the film and saying, I'll show you how to cut it. And he didn't realize that this wasn't like a live action. You can't just start cutting the film
Mhm.
the way
Right.
you do with that and leaving it on the floor. And oh god, and plus that movie was supposed to be rated R
Yeah.
in order to keep it faithful to the books, which are, it's, oh god,
Our
Liana, do you know what the series is called?
What?
The books the Black Cauldron is based on?
Oh, the Black Cauldron. That's based on the Chronicles of, what is it? Prydain? I've never heard it actually pronounced. The Lloyd
Yeah.
Alexander
Yeah.
series.
So, like,
Yeah. Prydain. Okay.
yeah, so it's a fantasy book.
Yeah,
I
it's a
think you
fast
would,
book. But it wasn't the only nightmare at Disney
no,
animation.
but
No.
yeah, just
They went through a whole period where they weren't doing very successful animation. It wasn't making money, and also the company was sort of diverting itself away to other areas like the amusement parks. And so
Mhm.
and there was a period when they tried to partner with another uh company, a cruise company, to set up a pseudo cruise line, but ultimately ditched that company and set up its own cruise line. It went through a rather strange period of not really knowing where the corporate focus went, and that didn't turn around until 1989 when they made The Little Mermaid, and finally they got an animated film that was a big success. But because that film had a princess in it,
Right.
that rebooted or actually kickstarted the Disney princess franchise. And by the year 2000, they noticed that this is rather interesting.
and we call it the Disney Renaissance.
Yes, that's right. It's the Disney Renaissance. And so they made Beauty and the Beast in 1991, which made money as well. And they thought, oh, we're onto something. If we made we
That
have
one got,
yeah.
that movie was the reason they created the animated category for the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it's because Beauty and the Beast actually won Best Picture.
It
and
got a
they
nomination.
It got a nomination, and they
Yeah.
never wanted to have to do that again because the Oscars hate animation.
That's right. Yeah, but something interesting happened around the late 1990s, right? So the 1990s, they kept on making one princess movie after another. So after Beauty and the Beast, there was Aladdin.
Aladdin?
Then was Pocahontas in the mid 90s and Mulan in 1998. And there was a president of the Consumer Products Division, Andy Mooney, and he went to a Disney on Ice show. And he noticed that girls were showing up wearing princess costumes, like not Disney princess costumes, but generic princess costumes that they got from Halloween stores. And they were adding princess items to them. So he thought, hey, if we could take all these female characters together and turn it into a franchise called Disney Princesses, we could make money.
And I've told this story before, but Derwin has more details and facts than I did.
Well, Derwin has, you have a degree in history. Do you only have one degree in history, Derwin? I never remember. You have multiple degrees.
I just got one degree in history.
Okay, yeah, but Derwin is a historian. That's why he knows this stuff. And it's not like Disney didn't put out films with interesting female characters in that gap. They just weren't princesses. I mean, Mary Poppins came out. People think that Mary Poppins is like this throwback to Victoriana, but you drop a movie in 1964 and the mom's a suffragette is making commentary on the times, right? And then one of my personal favorites, these are both live action, but Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
I love that movie.
Yeah, loved that movie and its themes of like sacrifice and the war effort. and all that stuff. And then, of course, the film that launched 1,000 furries, Robin Hood, in probably not just 1,000, probably 1,000,000 furries.
Yeah.
And that was a recoup film, right? That was a way to make some quick money after something else didn't. The Jungle Book was the film before. No, the Aristocats
Yeah.
was before Robin Hood.
But
Which is a shame because like Aristocats is probably one of my favorite Disney movies.
I love the song. Well, I guess these were all making money back after Sleeping Beauty. That tended to happen. One of the big princess epics cost a ton, and then they had to make 101 Dalmatians, The Sword and the Stone, The Jungle Book, The Aristocats, and Robin Hood, and The Rescuers.
Yeah.
To recoup the costs.
Yeah. And but when you mentioned that Mary Poppins, there was a suffragette in there. This is what I find amusing about Disney, in that Disney often markets itself as being, very old-fashioned, traditional, conservative, white middle-class American values. And when you visit the park, it's like that. Main Street USA was obviously built around. It was obviously based on a town that was inhabited mostly by middle-class white people in the middle part of the United States, right? But
Main Street USA is specifically based on Marceline, Missouri, is it?
Yeah.
Which
Okay,
is the
there we
town
go.
where Walt
Okay.
Disney grew up.
yeah. And it's got that sort of, what's the old phrase? Motherhood, God, and apple pie type of look to it. But when you look under the surface, Disney starts to get a little subversive sometimes, because although the princesses are often stereotyped as being, privileged white women who, wait for a prince to rescue them, in the current list of 13, an amazing 38.4% of them are actually from ethnic or racial or visible minorities.
Yeah, and most of those came out before the Mulan was right in the middle of the princess branding, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it started with Jasmine in 1992, and it continues with Mulan and Tiana, Greta and Moana and Raya. Right now, so if people are accusing, it's funny. There's some people who accuse Disney of being, very traditionalist and conservative, and other people could accuse Disney of being very woke. But if you look at that, 38.4% of the princesses come from ethnic and racial minorities. Compare that to the number of U.S. corporate boards who have directors who are women or women of color, right?
Yeah.
And Disney comes off with an exceptionally high representation of women of color on its princess line. Of course, because of the conference board, which is a business think tank in the United States, discovered that in 2023, women comprised 32% of U.S. corporate board directors, right? But women of color were only 7% directors on U.S. corporate boards. Now, compare that to the Disney Princess franchise, where 38, what did I say?
38.5, I believe.
Yeah, 38.4% of them are women of color. So they're very well represented on the Disney Princess franchise. So it's not necessarily a franchise that just promotes privileged white women. And
also, I just want to add, people are always like, oh, they're white and blonde. Not really.
No.
There's like 3 blondes, I think.
Yeah.
And that's
Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. Who's the third?
Rapunzel.
Oh, Rapunzel. I always forget about Rapunzel because Rapunzel's Rapunzel. I mean, her hair's her defining characteristic, right?
She doesn't wear tiara either, but
I mean,
actually a lot of them don't.
The original Little Mermaid was blonde. They changed it to red for the film. And I mean, when you think about what Disney was doing in the 80s, the 80s was an aesthetic of kind of this androgynous, very aggressive, muscular femininity. And Disney was dropping characters like Jessica Rabbit in 1998, and then
And like they didn't even dare put Jessica under their own branding because they put it under Touchstone.
yes,
I remember.
yeah, well, because it was that hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that they were very experimental back then with the stories. They were doing a lot of detective fiction because they did The Great Mouse Detective as well. That was when they started experimenting with the pop. Well, they were always very musically inclined, but Oliver and Company was the first time I remember where it was like a named pop artist involved,
Yeah, it
because that
was
was
Billy
Billy Joel. Yeah.
as Dodger.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess Robin Hood had um is that Roger Miller who did the music for that one?
I don't
But that
know.
that was more, he was more honky tonk. The whole modern pop construct didn't really exist back
Mhm.
then. It's, you know, Disney's always kind of zagged when the world zigged, you know?
Well,
Yeah,
you know, something Derwin mentioned was how like after Walt's death, you know, they focused on the theme parks to try and build one. They're doing that again
Hmm.
because the movies are floundering, and I have a point to make on that in a second, but now they're working on a multi-billion-dollar expansion to Disneyland, which, you know, if they give us a Tangled Land, finally, Tangled Land is currently opening in Tokyo Disney, and
Okay.
I'm
Tangled Land.
well, they just opened Frozen in Hong Kong, which is amazing from the pictures I've seen. They're opening Peter Pan, Tangled, and Frozen in Tokyo. And the most Rapunzel has in the US is bathrooms in the Magic Kingdom in Disney World.
Well, they got to get people back into the parks post COVID, right? That
Yeah,
is
well,
part of that is the
I,
big panic with Disney.
I don't think they're having too much trouble with that because the
No, the
parks,
parks are crowded.
yeah, the
Are
parks
they?
are crowded. Oh
Good.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
no,
yeah.
they're
Because
doing
that, I
great.
mean, that Star Wars initiative, I don't know
Oh
what they
god,
were thinking. Oh
no,
boy.
that
That's got people going to it for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, most, you know, and here's the thing: I've been to Star Wars Land at Disneyland,
At
and
Disneyland, yeah.
yeah,
No, I'm
it's
I'm talking the immersive experience at Disney World.
oh
That
the
was,
hotel. Oh
yeah,
god,
that
That
was
one. Oh, that one.
ridiculously expensive, and you apparently never saw daylight.
Yeah, yeah.
no,
That one. Yeah, yeah. That was
like
must have looked good on paper to somebody, but
okay. Here's the thing: in theory, I get it. I get the appeal of a completely immersive Star Wars hotel.
Oh, if it had been half the price, I would have
Oh
been there.
yeah.
It was
Oh
the price
yeah.
point.
Yeah, no, the price point was atrocious. And it's like, okay, I understand that. So something I want to say about the movies with what they're doing right now. I we know I love Disney. I love the princesses, but oh my god, I have so many issues with how they're handling things right now. But, you know, recently after I think it was after the Wish flop in particular, you know, Bob Iger came out and he said, you know what, we're gonna focus on quality and less on quantity, and we're not gonna put out as many movies. I have not seen any evidence of that. On average, an animated movie takes about 4 years to make, and that's still conservative. Like usually it takes more, including development, which oh god, what I could say about Frozen in that aspect. But here's the thing: they've announced a Moana 2 for later this year. They don't even have The Rock or Alani Ali. Sorry, I don't remember her name. And
Moana's voice.
Moana's voice.
Hmm.
It turns out what it looks like they're doing is they're cobbling together ideas from a failed Moana Disney Plus show.
Ooh.
And they're just going to turn that into a movie. The thing is, we've seen this before because they did a bunch of straight to DVD
Yes.
yeah.
sequel movies.
Those
That
did
was the
real well, though, financially, didn't they?
I mean, for a DVD, maybe.
Yeah, well, I
Especially,
mean, a huge portion of Disney's market is movies that people watch in the home. It always has been because of the kids. People don't want to drag their kids out to theaters. which that's an interesting thing to me because the big family outing every year was the Disney film, right? There was only one a year. If there might have been an Amblin Entertainment film, and you better be on your best behavior, or else you're not going to be able to go because everything, wasn't released to streaming 6 weeks afterwards, minus Oppenheimer because reasons. But we have changed what these movies mean. They do feel like wallpaper now, don't they?
Mhm.
Instead of the event, it's sort of like, yeah, there's going to be something by Disney and or Pixar at some point. I mean,
The next,
Raya I liked. And then, see, I'd argue that Encanto, Isabella's a form of princess in that world. She's a princess in name only, because of the status of that family. But it's been, Lightyear was developed for streaming. Strange World was a streaming thing. Elemental did well for them. Wish
Elemental should have done better. Oh God,
I
that
don't
movie was so good.
have you seen Elemental, Derwin?
no, not yet.
See,
But what we're describing happens to every company, though.
I'd love opinions on Elemental because it's vaguely based on the Chinese American experience.
All right, I'll watch it
Yeah.
soon. But
And then it was Wish. Interesting. I guess they're putting Soul into theaters now. They're releasing Soul, Turning Red, and Luca into theaters.
oh, Turning Red was in theaters, wasn't it, or something?
No, it was straight to streaming.
Oh, okay. No,
Turning Red was great.
wait. Okay, I'm just I remember I did see it in theater only because I got an invite to a preview screening.
Oh, there you go.
It did go to streaming, yeah. But
Yeah.
what we're describing, a movie doesn't do well, and then a bunch of sequels come out. That happens with a lot of companies. So and you see this in every corporate history. They go through phases and ups and downs, right? So I'm not going to be like certain business analysts back about 25 years ago who predicted the end of Disney because, for example, more people were heading off to Universal Studios than to Disney. Companies do have ups and downs. The big sign of whether a company is going to survive is whether it can recover from the downturns or has yet another downturn followed by another downturn. And so I think it's premature right now, like some people on the internet or social media say that Disney is doomed. We've seen this before 25 years ago when with the Disney parks versus Universal Studios, for example. Both are still around now, right?
Well, and let's face it, they've always been a company that stumbled around between big princess hits, right? The Frozen to Encanto continuum is sort of par for the course for Disney, is it not?
Yeah. And the hits don't necessarily have to be princess hits either. I mean, the princesses themselves, interesting enough, that franchise does evolve over time. I mean, it began with before it was even marketed as a unified princess franchise.
Right.
It was the three traditional princesses based on European fairy tales. And then what's interesting is then there was Ariel and Belle, so they were a little bit more modern. They were more modernized, right? They that's where they got into this formula where you'd have a hit song and they turned into a musical.
Well, I just want to say really quick, even at the time of when they did Cinderella, Eileen Woods, who voiced her, there's a quote from her saying, we did make her sassy. We did.
Yeah. Well, she was sassy, but if you
but let's face it, the mice stole the show in Cinderella. Those mice were awesome. But yeah, if you look at the segmentation of the princess period, peak princess happened during that Renaissance period where, let's face it, Ariel and Belle were nerds for their various societies, right? Like Belle's whole thing was, she was weird because she liked to read, and Ariel had ambition, and That was the thing that drove me crazy about the whole, oh my God, you're race swapping Ariel. Aren't you mad? It's like, no, the key characteristic of Ariel was not her hair color. It was her voice. That's what she had to give up to go
Yeah.
to the surface. So I don't care what color her hair is.
But it's interesting you say Ariel and Belle are nerds. So we went from traditional fairy tale princesses
Mhm.
to two nerds, and then there's Jasmine and Pocahontas. So we're starting to get into the more non-European type of princesses. And then I noticed that the princesses start becoming, not all of them after Pocahontas, but they start becoming a sort of warrior princess type of archetype.
Mhm.
You see
Well,
that?
except for Rapunzel.
Well, Rapunzel,
Well-
Rapunzel isn't a warrior princess, but she does, wield that skillet pretty awesomely.
Pam.
Yeah, and Tiana isn't really a warrior princess, but look at the roll call after Pocahontas. There's Mulan,
Yeah.
Merida,
Yeah.
Moana, Rhea. All of that group could be considered a sort of warrior princess lot. And also, they are prince. That group rose to power without marrying a prince, right? In fact,
Well, they started as princesses. Well, Tiana did, yes.
Yeah.
Tiana's not. I thought she worked somewhere in the United States in a restaurant.
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
The prince was the frog. It's weird because the movie is called The Princess and the Frog, but
Yeah.
that movie was a lot of things, and I enjoyed it, but it confused me. But yeah, Rapunzel is the princess in question. I mean, even Pocahontas was the princess.
Yeah,
in
she was the
question,
daughter
yeah.
of the local ruler. But
Yeah.
what you see here are two interesting, I guess, changes to the Princess franchise, or evolution of the Princess franchise. You're getting commoners who rise to power. So in that sense, it's almost Napoleonic, right?
Yeah.
Napoleon was unique amongst the European monarchs of the 19th century, is that he did not claim to be descended from any major king or Charlemagne or anybody. He just openly bragged that he was a self-made monarch, right?
This just took a turn that I
Yeah.
kind of love, because if you continue the analogy, right? If you continue the comparison, Napoleon was a reaction to, eras of monarchy that didn't do a ton for the people, as the Tiana through Rhea era of Disney princesses was a reaction to the popularity of the brand coinciding with really intense criticism of that brand.
Which is interesting, because when you look at it, the idea of a commoner marrying into royalty is more subversive than just, oh, she's a princess in her own right.
Yeah, when's the Meghan Markle movie hitting
Oh,
Disney
God.
animation? Yeah.